What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Troll Bro Dude. And before we get into anything, please be sure to sign up for Underdog Fantasy, our partners. You can use the promo code SLOP, that's SLOP, to get a $100 deposit match when you sign up, or use the link in the description for that. When you do that, also sign up for our SLOP season contest, because right now you can guess where players will be going before the trade deadline and win up to $500 on Underdog in bonus cash that you can use on their pick'em, their fantasy drafts, that you can do fantasy drafts every single night on Underdog for the NBA. And then in addition to that, pick'em, which is a lot of fun to do. Basically, you choose higher or lower on your favorite players' NBA stats, and you can win real money on any given night. So if you have not already, promo code SLOP. Sign up for the SLOP season contest. The link is in the description for that. And then in addition to that, use their pick'em, do the fantasy. Let's get involved, folks. But before, SLOP season is really started today. Today's January 5th, and we have our first official trade of the year. And it's a huge one.
Transaction. Our first official transaction.
Our first official transaction of the year, and it involves Sam's Boston Celtics.
No,
Sam,
that was a blockbuster.
Where were you, and will you ever forget where you were and what you were doing when you found out that Noah Vonleh was traded to the San Antonio Spurs with cash?
I mean, this was the Kennedy assassination with the 2023 Boston Celtics. People were crying where I was.
Yeah.
It might have been because I startled them in the deli I was in by screaming no. But there were people crying, much like the Kennedy assassination. This is the end of the title run. You got to think that the Celtics saw the writing on the wall after that.
Yeah.
We knew there was going to be consequences when they, let OKC hang 150 on them.
Absolutely.
To see them start dismantling this powerhouse team so quickly has just been, upsetting. I thought a lesser player might go first, like Jason Tatum, but I guess they just went right for the star package.
Noah Vonleh, former top 10 pick.
Yep.
Famously called better than Joel Embiid before the 2014 NBA draft by Elliott Shore-Parks of Philadelphia's WIP. That just salary dumping a guy like that, do you think the league will get involved here? Do you think that there might be some sort of sanctions around?
I mean, if you think about it, if they shut him down for the rest of the year and they get Wemby and they run back a Vonleh-Wemby front court next year, the league is over. It's like the Warriors getting Durant again, it's not fair.
It's so tough.
People are just going to opt out of, competing at that point. So it's upsetting, man. It's just really upsetting because we want to see our teams be competitive. And when one team, I like the Celtics, but I just can't abide. Well, yeah, I can't support what they've done.
You can't say things about Sam Presti and then turn around and say,
right. I mean, it flies right in the face. I hate to see my team tank like this. So just be non-competitive.
In all seriousness,
I was being serious. I was
100% serious.
100% serious.
In all seriousness,
yeah,
we can always count on Brad Stevens to give us some bullshit move that doesn't matter, and usually,
yes,
I guess
break the ice.
Yeah,
breaking the ice.
Yeah, at least he gets out ahead of it. He did it. This is the third straight time he's done it. He got the Horford trade at least mattered when he traded for Horford again, when he traded Kemba and the draft pick. That was during the playoffs. And then the last year it was they acquired Bol and PJ Dozier, who they both cut.
But you could have on a different construction. I think both those guys are actually kind of good, but it just not on the Celtics. They just can't get.
They would never get minutes.
Yeah.
And also PJ Dozier had torn his ACL and
that's right.
Yeah. But now it's the third straight time where he gets out ahead of it. The only part of this trade that actually does have a little bit of something to it is the fact that they cut Gorgui Dieng. So that seems like a thing. I feel like teams are going to be interested in him. I don't think that he's a world beater by any means. And I think that he definitely didn't have a place on a rebuilding team like the Spurs, but he's been a solid backup center on some he played decent for the Hawks last year. A few years ago, he did it for the Grizzlies. I don't know, he can defend. He's he can at least theoretically shoot threes. He's a 36% career 3-point shooter. He's had up and down seasons. He shot like 40% last year, way below his average this year. But like, I wouldn't be shocked if there were teams out there that picked him up on a vet minimum, maybe with an open roster spot. I don't think the Sixers would, but I think that there could be a team out there that could just take a flyer on him.
Yeah, shout out to my former podcast host, co-host, Lucky's Pipe and friend, who texted me and reminded me of this on the day. Back in the day, like Celtics fans, when we were like dying for rim protection in the Jared Sullinger, Kelly Olynyk, the Jelly Sullyneck days, we wanted him so bad to pair with Larry Sanders, or like him or Larry Sanders were the two guys we really wanted, because they were both just having historic rim protection numbers in like 2013 or whatever the hell that was. But he has been like a competent-ish big in the like, but people might not know that because he was just spent most of his career with the Wolves, you know, like.
Yeah, he's like been fine.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that he's 33 years old now, so that's an issue. But like, I guess it does. The one thing I will say is that the moves that the league has made over the last year or two has led me to believe that these older centers that are like at best backups, like Hassan Whiteside and Gorgie Zhang, are like kind of going by the wayside just because the league plays small across the board now. Like I was thinking about it the other day, and everyone keeps talking about the Sixers and like the Nets and all these teams that need to acquire a backup center. And like, even your Celtics, like you probably don't really have a super reliable backup center, but you start a center. So you start two centers really. Yeah. But like, but the thing is like the Celtics, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Cavs, the Warriors, all the teams that like kind of in theory would need a backup center, they can go small with guys that are in their starting lineup, and they can put them at the 5. And that's kind of where the league is just been moving for so long that like Will in the Discord, who's a Nets and Magic fan famously, who's been on the podcast before, he always says like, everyone thinks that like they need a backup center, but the reality might just be that like Larry Nance is like the only backup center who can actually play in the playoffs. Like most of these guys that we're talking about like teams acquiring are probably better off just trying to figure out a roster, like figuring out like even the Sixers might be better off going small with PJ Tucker at the 5 and putting a bunch of wings around him.
Well, and you know what might be like a canary in the coal mine of that is Rudy Gobert's play this year. Like, and just, you know, how that you need to have skill as a big man. You know what I'm saying? I feel like every like big man. Well, I mean, he's like and he's like barely. Well, we'll get to PJ Tucker later on in the episode, but like I think that, you know, you look at all the centers that like play now, they all have skills.
Yeah.
Like who's like Rob Williams is probably on the lower end of like bigs in terms of skill, and he's like very skilled in terms of like passing, knowing reads, being fluid, you know, like all that other stuff. You can't just be a big guy anymore. You've got to like know how to play. Yeah. Like
part of the reason why I actually kind of defended Andre Drummond was because I actually and Drummond's issue is that he thinks he's a point guard. That's really his thing. It's not necessary, but like he's a kind of in the same ballpark. Like he's the reason why I trust him a little bit more than your average backup center, even though in big moments he can absolutely shit the bed, is because he does all the things you're talking about now. Like he can pass, he can run a little bit of dribble handoff action, he can do whatever. His touch isn't good, but he's a good defender. And like, it is funny because I look across the league and it's like, I'd probably rather go with go with the smaller option or try to find one of those guys, like you said, that can either have like one offensive skill that is truly reliable and just survive on that end. Like whether it's shooting to space the floor, or whether it's someone who can pass and you can run a little bit of actions through, or, you know, it's basically someone that isn't just like cannibalizing your space and also is an issue defensively. Because a lot of the times when you get to the playoffs, these guys, you know, the book's kind of out there. Like if you have enough shooting, if you have enough ball handling on the perimeter, they can just kind of get lost, and then they're not really playable that deep into the playoffs.
Exactly. Yeah. And just nobody does that anymore. Like, you know, like it's not something that happens and you can go up and down like all the rosters. I mean, look at what the Mavs tried to do with JaVale McGee, and they like literally cannot play him. And he's like a pretty athlete, even as old as he is. He's still a pretty athletic big. But because he just has no skills, they have to play Christian Wood.
They almost honestly like the thing with Wood is like you might as well just lean into that all offense thing.
Yeah.
And just be like, fuck it. Like, who's going to be able to stop Luka with a space floor at every spot? Like that's honestly just as effective and moving away from guys that are more like traditional, like rim protector backup bigs potentially. Yeah. So, like, I guess like your stereotypical like rim protector / lob catcher, which is like what JaVale McGee falls into.
Yeah. I think you nailed it with this move, though. I think this was Brad Stevens doing his work early. They knew they were going to need a roster spot at some point. I don't think it necessarily indicates that there's a trade pending for the Celtics or anything like that. I think they're so deep in the tax, that if they don't get anyone, it's a tax maneuver, and then you can sign someone at the minimum later on down the line, a buyout guy. You can sign Georgie Dang.
There you go.
Yeah, and just there that is.
Gallo's the one piece you guys really can move, right? Like he's like the one salary that is like for matching purposes because he's not in your rotation. He's obviously torn his ACL. Like he's not going to play. So
it's him and just in terms of useless salary, it's like him and Malcolm Brogdon, I'd say, are the two that are.
The tide is turning.
Yeah, the Civil War is back. Celtics, we always get in a Civil War about players, when the season starts going bad. And we're starting, like Jaylen Brown, there's always been a Civil War about Jaylen Brown. But we're starting to see the cracks of the Malcolm Brogdon fashion. And I'm jumping in on that one.
Which is funny because Malcolm Brogdon, you and Matt were complaining about Malcolm Brogdon earlier, and I was like, the Sixers, once again, for the 7th straight year, have 5 rotation players. And you guys are like, this guy that was...
I can't believe you're doing this to Matisse Thybulle.
This guy who was in the All-Star conversation 2 years ago is our 7th man, and it's ruining our lives.
Yeah, he sucks, and he sucks at that. He's not as good as our good All-Stars. Let me put it that way. He thinks he's an All-Star. He's destroying Rob Williams' spacing.
Which is the greatest crime.
Rob room to kick. Yeah. That's honestly why I'm mad. Like, if I'm being honest with myself, it's that he doesn't play well with Rob Williams, and it's making me mad. He's not like Marcus Smart. He doesn't have the beautiful synergy of Smart and Rob, which is making me mad now.
Literally the worst thing you can do as a Celtic. But
unironically, yes. I'm being totally serious. I'm actually being totally serious.
It's literally your baby boy. And now we're going to talk about, speaking of Boston and my baby boy, we have to talk about Bill Simmons.
Let's go. Our beautiful guy.
Our beautiful boy, Bill, went on his podcast this week. Did a solo pod. We always love the Bill solo pods because it's kind of like when Keith Pompey used to do his solo pod by himself. It can go off the rails sometimes. And he did one analogy where he compared the Miami Heat to his mother-in-law's spleen regenerating, which I appreciated.
That rules, dude. God,
so good.
I love the idea of like Bill, but then you said it perfectly. Or who was? I think it was you that said like or maybe that was somebody in the replies said that like I was waiting on him to say the team that matched his like the comp, what his analogy was. And then he finally says the Heat, and it was just like pure heroin. Like I was like, exactly, Bill. That is
black tar.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of content I want.
My serotonin just explodes. My oxytocin. It's like fucking. I'm in my mother's womb.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
That's Miami.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
But so here's the deal. The Heat. I'm sorry, back to the Bill. So Bill does this whole thing about basically running down the power rankings of the teams, and he comes across the Sixers and he talks about the Sixers making a potential move and something to keep an eye on. And Bill does this thing where sometimes it's information he's heard, Sometimes I think it's a little bit of wish casting, which what he wants to see, he puts out there. I'll let you know now before I tell you what he said. He doesn't know anything about the Sixers. Everything that he says about the Sixers, Daryl does not keep him plugged in. He's not plugged in with the Sixers. Every time he has ever said anything about the Sixers in the past year or two, it never comes true. He a year ago at this time was trashing Daryl Morey for suggesting he could get James Harden for Ben Simmons. He then suggested that the Sixers trade James Harden in the offseason, which they never were going to do. Everything that he has said has not come true, basically. And this time around, he suggested a Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey trade for Bradley Beal. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people got like upset with this because obviously they don't want to trade Maxey, and I don't think it makes the Sixers any better. I think it might probably makes them a little bit worse, to be honest. And the main thing about this is his criticism of having Maxey on the team, which, like, I think your biggest criticism should be the defense. The defense is just not sustainable with a Harden Maxey backcourt. That's fine. I think he had mentioned that in passing. And the fact that Melton's been playing really well, which is true. Melton's been like our third or fourth best player this year. He's been absolutely awesome. But the thing is that he said Maxey needs the ball. And his solution for this was to trade for Bradley Beal.
That's right. You need to get Bradley Beal in there with James Harden and Joel Embiid. That'll make
perfect synergy.
Yeah. Because, you remember how it worked with John Wall, who's like one of the best assist point guards of all time, and they like couldn't make that work. Now put him with
and he was a better shooter then, and he was off. He was buying into the off-ball stuff. Now he's like the guy.
Yeah. And
he has been the guy for so long.
I just don't even like know what to make of like Bradley. Bradley Beal is like a perfectly average superstar now. You know what I'm saying? Like a perfectly average star where it's like, I don't know. He's not bad at anything really, but he's not like good at anything really. And he's
perfectly well-rounded in that he's good at pretty much everything on offense, but he's not great at anything.
Like not shooting anything. Like he was like a sharpshooter, like back in the day. That was like his thing. It was like movement. You know, when they would do the John Wall run in under the rim and then he would spray it out to shooters, like that worked out great.
Used to be compared to Ray Allen.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just like not who he is anymore. I don't know. I don't think I would do any of these things. Sixers fans plus Bradley Beal's contract equals September 11th level consequences.
I really don't. I honestly think if you're first off, no one the Wizards,
that was me reading a comment from the comments. By the way, that was not me for podcast.
Not riffing.
I was not just me half-heartedly doing a 9/11 bit. That was not. If you were listening, but you might have thought that was what was happening.
But like the Wizards aren't going to trade Bradley Beal. Like, can we just stop talking about this until Bradley Beal asks out? They're not trading him. We haven't heard a single thing about him being unhappy since he signed the contract. We haven't heard anything about him wanting out. Let's move on from that until he finally puts in the word, which when he does, I would imagine it's during the offseason anyway. I'm sure he's going to pick where he goes.
It just drives people insane for players that are like over like a 21 PER to be on bad teams. Like
I know.
Yeah, it's like we have to get them out of there. Like, I don't know. This obsession with like, I get why everyone's obsessed with the Bulls like trading their guys, and I get that like theoretically makes sense. Newsflash, they're not winning games anyway. Like it's not like they're getting carried by having Zach LaVine on the squad. Like, I'm sorry. Like maybe they would clear a little bit more. They're still dog shit. I'm sorry.
Well, we need the Bulls and the Wizards and the Raptors, who we'll talk about in a little bit, to blow it up just so we have content.
The real reason they should blow it up is for that exact reason, because there's no one. Well, yes, for us, but also because there's no one else selling and everyone wants to buy, and you can probably get a good price.
That's what I think. That's why I think this is a little bit of wish casting from Bill, because we know we work in the fucking we do podcasts. He does a podcast. The numbers and the company does well when people get traded. And I literally found the first article about trading Bradley Beal that was written by The Ringer, and it was written in 2019. We are in 2023. It has been 4 years that they have been trying to trade Bradley Beal. He doesn't want out. They're not going to trade him. And even if he did, the Sixers losing Tyrese Maxey, who, I mean, I know Sixers fans probably would. I mean, I personally would rather have Tyrese Maxey than Bradley Beal. But on a player for player basis right now, Bradley Beal is a better NBA player than Tyrese Maxey right now. I'm looking forward. I'm hoping that Maxey can get better. Beal's about to be Beal's in his 30s. Like, he's not in the middle of his athletic prime necessarily. Like, I think it's a possibility he declines. I think he's a very good player, and I think that he could help a lot of teams as a second or third guy. I don't really see how losing Tobias Harris, who's been very good for the Sixers this year, and Tyrese Maxey, who's done nothing but improve, nothing doing what the team has asked him to do, has been fantastic in his role. And by the way, is a better off-ball scorer and shooter than Bradley Beal. I just don't, this will never happen. But I just needed to talk about that a little bit up top, because I feel like I do feel like the reality is that this deadline is going to be slower at least from a big name basis. Like, I don't think Levine's going to get traded. I don't think Beal's going to get traded. I don't think the guys that everyone thinks could possibly be traded are going to be moved unless someone asks out in the next few weeks. And from all the reporting, it seems like Levine is the one that is more likely to just straight up ask out of Chicago than Beal is to ask out of Washington. So until we get more whispers about this player maybe wanting out, I don't think there's going to be any I think last year's deadline spoiled us a little bit, where it was like, we got James Harden, Ben Simmons, Sabonis, CJ. Yeah. Every deadline is like, you might get one guy that's in the All-Star conversation that gets moved at a deadline, and even that's pretty rare. So, this deadline is going to be more role players, guys who are important, maybe some teams that want to reset and take advantage of the fact that no one's selling. But there's not going to be these massive moves that everyone thinks. And I think that really just, we're just hoping that something happens here in the next month.
Yeah. I think it's going to be guys we haven't even talked about. Like, I think if I were the Raptors, the guy I would probably most likely try to move is Pascal Siakam, honestly. Like,
you would get a massive haul for Pascal Siakam if you.
That's what I'm saying. And that clears up your other guy. Like, he has the highest value of any of those guys. You're figuring out that your timeline is probably different than what you thought coming into the year, but it also would fix your floor balance a lot. If you're worried about Scotty Barnes turning into Ben Simmons, the thing that you could do is, move Pascal, keep OG, keep some of these spacing guys around, and, keep working with that. I don't know. That's what I would do if I were them, because can you imagine what the Lakers would give up? You could get both picks from the Lakers, and
I don't really think the Lakers one is one that I would necessarily be interested in, just because I don't really like any of their, the picks are valuable, but
the Raptors are also probably going for a faster rebuild. But
that's the thing. Yeah. It's I think I would look at teams like Phoenix that seem like they're desperate to could you get 8 and N picks? Could you get 8 if you get 8 and N picks from them, because Ayton wants out anyway? Mm-hmm. Maybe get Cam Johnson or someone thrown in there. If you can get a package like that where it's Ayton, Cam Johnson, 2 or 3 first round picks, and then Ayton's a good player, so you're not even it is a downgrade, but it's not a massive downgrade to the point where you're not going to be competitive still, and then you're going to get a better draft pick in this upcoming draft, which is the thing that I do think that people are forgetting, that the part of the reason why Portland did this last year, and they had incentive because they had a lottery protected pick. But the biggest thing that is the difference between, if I'm trying to make a move, basically, if I'm trying to do a rebuild on the fly or do a reset or whatever, then the thing is that it improves my own draft pick. Because like we'll talk about the Raptors. Let's just get into the nightmare of this game was. Because
can you before you do, can you blow up Will's last comment? Because I think that will be okay. Says if this was any other team, Sam would be like, you can't trade a 28-year-old All NBA guy. They need to stay competitive. Which, by the way, I think I literally said this about Pascal Siakam maybe 3 podcasts ago.
Sure. Until you saw what happened last night.
Honestly, like, yeah, because I think we were talking a little bit before we like turned on the pod, and like the Raptors now have this smell of a team that's quiet quitting, is what I said.
Yeah.
Like, they're doing millennial, like this is beyond just the team like not fitting right anymore. Like I think this is like leaked into like the locker room or like how the guys are playing. Like there's an extra stink on this that it does need to be changed. Like I think that all those the losing streak and all this other stuff is kind of like added up to it. Like their heart is not in the rat ball mode. They don't have Pat Riley to, kind of inspire 24/7 rat mode. It is a little bit inspiring to think about how long the Heat players have been doing rat mode. And the longevity of it, because like the Raptors have only been doing it for like 2.5 years or so, and they're already over it.
They're newly adapted to rat ball.
Yeah. So it's
Kyle Lowry taught them it, then he left.
He
he graduated to greater rat ball mode in Miami. But like I looked at the minutes played in the NBA earlier today.
Yeah.
And 3 of the 4 for the second straight season. 3 of the 4 leading guys in minutes are OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, and Fred VanVleet, which actually makes me feel worse about the Raptors than I did. Because, I think a lot of their issues do come back to just like not like their depth kind of sucks.
And Masai quietly like fucking up a little bit the last few years. Like
not hitting margin moves. Which honestly, did he not hit margin moves, or did like Yuta Watanabe is pretty good on the Nets? Like they also have Kevin Durant, so like that might be a little bit different. The context is different for Yuta Watanabe right now than it was with the Raptors.
It's the same thing as like the Celtics had Max Strus in camp and like cut him for whoever. Like that happens a lot, but it's like you just don't get. It's the same thing Danny Ainge was getting slammed for. You know what I'm saying? Like we're just you have like Romeo Langford and Aaron Nesmith not be good, and then. It looks bad when you don't hit those moves for like 3 or 4 years in a row, like you need to. The Wizards not hitting those moves, but given those, that's like doing it with the 9th pick in the draft, but just like not hitting for, you just can't have like Malachi Flynn
was not a hit yet, at least. I mean, he's 23 or 24 now. Like he's in his 3rd year and he's not really solidly a rotational guard yet, which is troubling.
Okay. They traded to their 1st round pick for Thad Young.
Thad Young was a bad move. OPJ, once again, it's hard to say that he's a miss because he's been injured, but he's literally always injured. So like knew that was baked into the equation when you signed him. So the fact that their best players are playing all these minutes and they're still sucking, it would scare me more if I'm a Raptors fan, because it tells me that like unless we have a way to just like build out this depth and hope that we either get lucky in the draft or we trade all of our picks, and I don't even know how they're gonna build their depth if they're like they basically, what I'm trying to get at here was they were the kind of team that needed to take the swing on a Donovan Mitchell or a maybe if a Bradley Beal becomes available, or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, or whoever. I don't think Shai's ever going to be available. But the point here is that if there is a star that becomes available, they're the kind of team that needs to acquire an offensive star, but also it will fuck up their depth even more. So it's like you're kind of in a rock and a hard place unless you start nailing draft picks. And what happened last night was the worst. First off, I was following it from a distance because the Sixers were on, and I had it on. Like I was just following because I heard the Raptors didn't score for the first 6 minutes of the game. They didn't score a point until there was 5 minutes and change left in the first quarter.
That like literally like doesn't happen. The
craziest part about it was when I checked the score when they scored, it was 7-0 before that. Like the Bucks on the other end only scored 7 points during that. So it was at the end of the first quarter, it was 13-12. And I didn't even know it was on national television. I had heard that the game, and then I saw it was on national television, and I tuned it at the end when the Raptors came all the way back and they sent it to overtime, which I don't even know how that's possible. They were down like 15 with like a minute and 30 left. I keep doing this season where I'm like, oh, that game's over. And I stop paying attention to it. There have been more insane comebacks in the NBA this year than any I can ever imagine, to the point where I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
That's like kind of been on the rise. Like I feel like that's gotten worse. Like not worse. Like that has happened more and more every year for like the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Where like, because I think about that a lot, especially with like the Celtics last year and just how like volatile they were, about how like a 10-point lead doesn't mean anything anymore. That's like that's like a touchdown in football now. You know what I'm saying? Like you're down a significant amount, but it is by no means like insurmountable or even close to safe. Even a 20-point lead is not that much. That's like a 17-point lead in football. Like the 20.
Believe me, Doc Rivers is our coach. I know.
Yeah.
No, but like really, like the 3-point shot and the volume of 3-point shots. Plus, I swear that teams, maybe it's a fatigue thing. So many games in the regular season, you get disengaged. But I swear late game offenses, whenever, especially when you go up against a team like the Raptors or like the Sixers had it with the Pacers last night, where like when you get that full court press and you're really working to just even get the ball across half court, I swear that it has an effect on the effectiveness of these offenses, and it can lead to these collapses, which basically just like the momentum builds in favor of, and the Raptors got some favorable calls, and they had one really egregious call at the end of that game that should have not happened. But it does lead to these circumstances where so many threes, late game press, turnovers, all that shit. Like it seems like it's at a peak just due to kind of the style of play. And the Raptors, really, that's the only way that these teams with this lack of offensive talent and creation can really win in the mind. Like they basically have to turn every game into a football game, which is what I've been saying. Like there's a reason why fans and teams come out on the other end after they play the Raptors and they're fucking exhausted. Like they're like, what did I just witness? And it is like the Raptors missed 78 shots last night.
That's crazy.
78.
And by the way, that game went to overtime, by the way.
It went to overtime.
78 shots, and the game went to fucking overtime.
They missed 78 shots. They dominated the possession battle. But it was one of the strangest games. Giannis had 12 turnovers. There was someone had tweeted at me, and it was the picture of Michael Jordan holding the title after he won for the first time.
Yeah.
And it said, when the Raptors lose by 20, but Giannis is held to 8 for 24 from the field. It's Nick Nurse, literally after all these games.
Well, it's just so funny when you look at that, then you look at the other side of the coin, the Celtics scoring 117 in regulation and losing by 33.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Like, that's insane, like in its own way. Like, it just shows, I don't know, how different every like thing can be. I guess it just shows how extreme these teams can be, because like I think we know what we think of the Raptors. Does this change how we feel about the Bucks? I know we just talked about the Bucks like a week and a half ago, but like I still don't feel like the Bucks are necessarily like bad. I mean, they still won this game. This is what the Bucks do. They win gross games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Bucks have and I remember doing this during their, because if you remember, you remember the Nets Bucks series. Like I always think of that series when I think of the Bucks, and I'm like, dude, the first 2 games I was like, these are the biggest frauds I've ever seen in my entire like. The Bucks, are the Bucks even good? Like they literally look like they're a bad team. Like the Nets were toying with them, and the Bucks were playing absolutely terrible. Oh, game 3, they scrap out a win. Might have been game 3 or game 4. I can't remember. One of them, they scrapped out a win. One, they won pretty impressively. And then they ended up coming back to win the series, and then they go on to win the finals. Like the Bucks are also a football team in that, like, they're not going to blow you away with amazing craft and passing and shooting and whatever. They're going to grind the game down to a halt. They're going to try to cause turnovers. You know, they have one of the best players in the NBA, and he even has nights where he looks terrible, but it doesn't even necessarily matter. He's been kind of dragging them to these victories. Like Drew and Chris Middleton didn't even play last night. So
I've said, I mean, everyone's probably heard it enough. They probably want me to shut the fuck up about it, but I've said that's where my cope is. That's where I blame the Celtics losing the title on, is having to go through the Heat and the Bucks in the same like playoffs, and that Warriors getting, you know, the free things. Also, it's very funny. What Blanche said in the comments is true. It is like very on brand for the Warriors to get Otto Porter's like only healthy season in like
for the past 5 years.
Yeah,
I was going to say, when was the last time that he was?
Yeah, because if
he Washington,
if he got hurt, they would not have won the title. Like 0% chance of them winning the title.
Well, didn't he get hurt in the finals?
Did he get hurt in the finals?
He did play in the finals, though. And he was a big part of the reason why they were in the finals, but I'm pretty sure he got hurt in the finals.
I don't know if they would have survived the Dylan Brooks and Gary. because he got hurt. Gary
Payton the second.
Gary Payton the second got hurt, and it's like, and we've seen what the Warriors look like when sans those two guys. It's gross. It's bad, you know.
No, that's not true, by the way. Joe Lacob said this is the most talented team that they've ever had.
That's right. Good job. Yep, that's absolutely right.
He said that on a podcast today.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so
he's the worst. Like, I honestly don't mind the Warriors. That I mean, I do hate them, but like that like magnifies all of my Warriors hatred by like 30. Is like Joe Lacob and like their management are it's like a perfect microcosm of like American capitalism, where it is like just success for the sake of being in the right time, but being absolutely sure that it's like you did something right.
No, the boss is the reason the company is successful.
The closest thing they can come to like taking credit for their like dynasty is that they like didn't trade Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. Like that's like the move that is like the most,
or not trading Steph Curry in picking Monta Ellis instead. I mean, that seems like it was the Bucks. They gave the Bucks the option.
So well, that's what I'm saying. That's not them. Then it's the Bucks fucking up. That's not
I know. I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
We almost
they haven't made any sense.
We almost lived in a world where Giannis and Steph could have been on the same team, which is for their primes, basically. Insane. But also the Bucks also passed on Embiid, by the way, the next year. So. Yeah,
let's bring that up to MB next time he's on the pod, just to really see if we go.
I think the Bogut trade was 2012, but they definitely still would have been bad enough to get Giannis at 15. So it's just an interesting thing that I thought of. Speaking of the Bucks, let's get into the Bucks. Oh, last thing on the Raptors. The Raptors have been active, according to our favorite HP Basketball, aka Matt Moore. The Raptors have been active in trade talks. But they're asking for, this is the part of the report I believed.
Okay.
Their asking prices are insane and absurd. Was what was said, basically.
I believe that.
Which I told Masai's in his Ben Simmons Maury mode. Where he's like,
exactly.
He's like, yeah, no, give me the moon and the stars for OG Anunoby. And it's not gonna happen. But the fact that they're even discussing it is something. Because I know in the past they've never even really had these conversations, and they've been hesitant to ever trade anyone, basically. So at least they're putting that out there is the one thing with the Raptors. Like they could potentially be the one team that sells, but I think it would have to be an overpay from another team, maybe a team that's desperate, like Phoenix, who really could be interested in Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, I know, and that's I think that's like where I come down is like I think. You know, I mean, maybe they could like tough it out. Like, I think that the reason that they're asking for the moon and the stars and all this other stuff is, and I think it might not be a bad idea versus like some of the other times this has happened, is they are actually one of the only sellers. So there's actually not a good chance, but there is a chance that someone could lose their mind and like actually pull the trigger on that. Like,
if it weren't for the fact that who's Sarver Sarver would basically ruin any trade that the Suns want to make. It is totally possible that a team that's desperate like that, that's falling behind in the standings, that has a wash player on their team and kind of needs to make an all-in move, could trade for Siakam or Anunoby or something like that.
Yeah. Like the Mavericks don't really have the pick ammo anymore, but like, teams like that, the Heat are like desperate. I think they're definitely in a desperation mode, almost to the point where I think they should. Well, no, I was going to say I think they should go the other way, but they're one of the only teams that doesn't play by the rules. That I can't do the contrarian thing here because we talk about it all the time. I
love that you're never the blow it up guy until it comes to the Heat and the Raptors.
That's right.
You're right. Like, well, in their case, you might.
I want to be clear. I was anti Raptors blow it up like a few weeks ago, but like having seen having actually watched a couple of their games, like the body language is too fucked up and bad. I'm doing my Bill impression here. Like
you're a body language doctor.
I'm doing body language doctor. Yeah. I'm doing bodies and spaces language doctor, and this is. Like they look bad. They look very bad. So
well, they are behind the Wizards and the Bulls. They are currently a game. So they're a game out of the 10 spot for the play-in.
Yeah.
But they're also just ahead of the Magic in the standings. So if they wanted to get into that bottom 5, and this was my nightmare, is that I personally would rather have them try to be competitive. I would rather have them try to get like into the play-in, because if they get Wemby, I will never stop throwing up on myself. Like it will just never that would be the perfect way for them to get out of this. It's like, oh, we just got a generational superstar and now we're going like he would be exactly what they need. I mean, the odds of them getting hit is like very low. Like they would have to really lean into the tank, even worse than they did when they got Scotty Barnes with the 4th pick. Like, they'd have to go into the shitter, and that might make them bad enough that it wouldn't matter. But
the odds of anyone getting like a guaranteed good player in this draft is not very high. You could have the worst record in the league, and it's like a little more. It's like a 27% chance you'll get Scoot or Wemby or something like that. Like or 30%, something like that.
You just got to get into that bottom 5. That's and right now, if the Raptors wanted to get into the bottom 5 in terms of record. Basically they're tied with the Thunder right now they're in like that 6 to 8 worst record range. Like the teams below them are the Spurs, the Rockets, the Pistons, the Hornets, and the Magic. Like they're the 6th or 7th worst record.
Yeah. I guess this is kind of a staring contest because I don't think the Wizards are as strong a seller as like some of these other teams.
They're not going to sell.
It's really just Kuzma, like is what we're talking about.
He'll probably be the best player traded at the deadline, like Will said earlier.
Yeah. So it's really just Kuzma with the Wizards. I think the 3 teams that are willing to like make multiple players that matter available are the Bulls, Raptors, and the Jazz. And I think the Jazz might be the other one that kind of
goes
make a move. Well, just makes a move and plays so. And I think you can get in early. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wonder how this is going to work out. Because the other thing that I think is kind of hanging over this too is I think not a lot of teams, but I think some teams are still looking at the Kevin Durant thing, even with the Nets playing as well as they are.
Yeah, I don't. I would just kind of be like, you can't. If you have a chance to win this year, you got to just move. What
you think the Suns should do something?
The Suns are the one team I probably don't think they should because I just think the season is cursed for them. I'm kind of like with the Crowder thing. It started off weird. Ayton doesn't want to be there. Maybe if you could trade Ayton for Siakam or someone like really good, then that changes the conversation a little bit for me.
Yeah,
but like Booker's out for a month. Like if anything, if I'm the Suns, I'm like not dying to be super competitive unless I can get a real star. Like I'm not like making role player upgrades. They have plenty of good role players. Like their fortunes are going to sink with Devin Booker or rise and sink with Devin Booker's health and with if they can acquire a real star and not like someone who could just like placate as a star. And like Siakam's good enough that you might be willing to make that move, but like you can hold out for KD, but I actually think you hold out for KD because it might be beneficial to be a little bit worse for you to get a higher draft pick.
Oh my God. I went to go look up if the Suns owed a pick or anything this year. Suns are, this is insane and bizarre.
Yeah.
They are completely pick neutral.
Yeah, they have all their picks.
And are owed none.
Yeah.
So they just they're literally the only team in the league like that.
Yep. I know.
No other team is pick neutral like that. Like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Toronto's close. They owe a 2024 second round pick to Memphis, but outside of that,
those are really the only teams that have their first. And the fact that they're in the position that they're in is going to make for a slow deadline, because the teams that can trade their first are not the teams that are going to be buying it at this deadline. So that's what it comes down to.
They might as well get in the back half of the West. I don't think that hurts your chances that much. We talk about all the time about how the West is kind of, the parity in the West is kind of crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, does it really make a difference if you play Dallas or like the Pelicans in round one? I don't think so. Like,
I mean, the thing with the Suns is like they kind of like, Cam Johnson needs to get healthy, Booker needs to get healthy, and then if that happens, they'll probably just be in the play-in. Like, I don't think there's a trade that they can make in the next month that really vaults them up a level, unless it is for something.
And that's what I'm saying though, is like, then because you have your pick, you come back next year with like a 17th or 18th pick in the draft. That could be a real guy. Like,
well, they don't, as Will points out, they don't scout.
That's also true.
They're just going to pick whoever the fourth-year senior is that has a good BPM or whatever. Like they don't really, they just kind of go whatever. Like, so, but I would probably just try to get a higher pick to trade it for a star. Like if you get a top 15 pick, if you even get like near the lottery, because like they're falling fast, dude. Like look at their they're like in the play-in. Like they're like missing Booker. Like Booker was
right now.
And they're gonna fall further. Like they're like barely above 500. Like unless Booker gets healthy quick, like the Suns are in trouble for sure. But before we talk about anything else, this is the end of the non-Patreon part. If you want to listen to the entire episode, where we also talk about the Bucks being interested in a potential trade target, the Heat losing to the Lakers and without LeBron and AD somehow on national television last night. And then in addition to that, we have the worst rotation player draft. So we're going to be drafting the 20 worst rotation players in the NBA. So if you want to hear us do that, link is in the description. You can subscribe to the Patreon for the entire episode.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing you're going to be missing, I reveal what the new subject I'll be discussing on the timeline will be if the Celtics lose to the Dallas Mavericks tonight. And Luka.
Something very controversial. Folks.
Yeah, something I would love to talk about more than the Celtics.
Has to be behind the paywall.
It has to be behind the paywall, though. Even though while you're listening to this episode, you could probably just go to my timeline and see where it was.
No.
Unless the Celtics won. Okay.
All right, so now we have to root for the Celtics so that we get more Patreon.
That's right.
Yes.